Hello and welcome to the Lore Link stream. Today's guest is Dan. How about you introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, I am Dan. Some of you may know me as Dan the Baker. I am a tabletop content creator, designer, AP producer, Pisces, like long walks on the beach, so on and so forth. Um, I guess here we're talking about that game designer portion of that list. So yeah, that's me, the creator of this bad boy here.
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. The StoryBake, which I absolutely adore the art, by the way. Um, if you want to share for our viewers, I also have it up for the screen share. Uh, tell us a little bit. How did you come up with the concept for this game? Because it's not every day we see a TTRPG about baking. So what inspired you to write a, I mean a system essentially about baking?
Yeah, so I've been baking like my whole entire life. My grandma taught me how to bake when I was little. I worked in my parents' restaurant where I made pizza and like made pizza dough all day. Um, I went to culinary school for baking and pastry. So I've been, baking has like been a part of my life like ever since I can remember. And when I started getting into tabletop stuff, um, starting getting more into it. Like I was always kind of into D&D and stuff, but then getting more into the indie side of things, and then being like, well, I could make a TTRPG. But like the first thing I wanted to do was like, I know I want to combine baking and gaming and tabletop gaming into one thing, um, because I just think baking is magical, and I want other people to experience that too.
I love it. So tell us a little bit. How does the system work? How does the adventures work?
Yeah. So it's powered by the apocalypse, like adjacent. More so, just that it's the 2d6, very narrative heavy. Um, the it has the 10 and above is a full success, 7 to 9 mixed success, 6 and below failure, that whole thing. But then everything has that kind of baking flavor, thrown over it. And here, of course, I mean metaphorically and literally, because baking and flavor, obviously. Um, so you can choose your class. Essentially is your baking specialty. In There are 10 different baking specialties, and they're all different things that you can bake, like breads and cakes, cookies, ice cream, everything like that. um, and you make your baker, and then as a group you make your bakery, which is a mobile bakery. It moves from town to town, and that's kind of like the crux of the adventures. Is your bakery um, almost like TARDIS style, takes you where you're needed, and that's where, and adventure and hijinks ensue.
So you mentioned that it's very, very storytelling. So this is much more of a, so it's not a very crunchy game. Like there's not a whole lot of stats. It's a lot more heavily influenced by the adventure of it, rather
Yeah.
than the stat blocks.
Yeah. There's only four stats that you have to, four numbers that you have to know about. That's your mental, physical, social, and spiritual stats. And then all of your abilities and everything have to do with those four stats. Like that's how you explore the world. That's how you bake things in the bakery. Um, I think in total there's like 12 skills tied to each of those stats. So that's like really nothing. Like it's, compared to some other games where there can be 100 different skills. Um, it's much less crunchy.
So when you're prepping the adventure and you're kind of prepping for a game, what are some of the things that you recommend players kind of think about or that are kind of worth knowing as the first time somebody picks up the game?
Um, I mean, I always like, I've had people ask if, you have to know anything about baking to really get into it. I think as long as you enjoy something about baking, whether that's actually doing the baking or eating a baked good, which if you don't enjoy eating a baked good, then we can't be friends. Then you would enjoy creating one of these characters. Um, I mean, and I think yeah, like you can really go in. I made it very easy. If you've never played a TTRPG before, it's super simple to learn, super simple to teach. I've taught it to people who like, I've taught it to like friends and family who like have never played TTRPGs before. And I think the like mindset I always say is just having the ability to find the magic and amazingness in something mundane. Um, because that's the like the basis of the game is like finding that the magic in baking in this kind of everyday thing.
So I have to ask, you mentioned, if you can't like if you don't enjoy eating goods, you can't be friends. What's your favorite baked goods? I feel like we can't get through this conversation
Yeah,
without knowing.
actually, I can hold on. Let me try and find it because it is in this book. It's one of the recipes in here. It's
Oh,
my
wonderful.
favorite thing that I have ever made. I should know where things are in this book because I, made it. But it is my dulce de leche brownie cheesecake. Here
Ooh.
it is. Uh,
Oh,
it's
awesome. That looks
yeah,
really
it's
yummy.
like the first recipe I ever made was a cheesecake recipe. Like when I was like I think it was like 15. I just like threw things together. And then yeah, this is just like for people who complain about things being too rich or too sweet, this is not the thing for you. Because it's it's dulce de leche, it's cheesecake, it's brownie, it's like all those things that are not necessarily, you're not going to count calories for this one if you want to be happy with yourself. But I always calories don't count if you don't count them. So that's
I always go off the shared calories don't count, right?
mhm.
Because how are you going to split up a calorie? It just doesn't work. So any
Yeah,
calories you share with friends don't count. They're automatically excluded.
exactly.
But so you mentioned having the recipe in the book. One of
Mhm.
your things, right, is that you put a recipe in every adventure. How do you go about choosing which recipe to put?
So I started with the recipes and then based the adventures off of the recipes, um, and a lot of them were there were recipes that I had for a while. Like I said, like the cheesecake recipe, I had that and just kind of changed it up to make that the dulce de leche and the brownie. Um, and it was just things that I thought would be fun to make, but also that weren't too difficult for a like beginner baker to make for themselves.
So as a player going into one of your adventures, what are the sorts of things that they would expect to see, or what are some of the, I mean, obviously baking is a recurring theme,
Mhm.
but what are some like the types of adventures that you currently have out there for players.
Yeah, so there in the book there are 13 pre-written adventures. Some of them written by me, some of them written by guest writers. The For the most part, like what you'll expect in all of them is that usually there's someone who needs help, and they come to you, the bakers, you adventurers, to get that help. Um, and so there's this kind of energy of like community and like helping out one another, that I think is a through line throughout all the adventures.
So are they usually more like one shots, or is it more of like some long-lived campaign where your bakery is moving from town to town to town, or is it or can it be kind of depending on how the GM feels it? Like what would you recommend for those kind of things?
It can definitely. It depends on the GM. I think depends on the group. Because like you can run all of the adventures. I can be run in a single session. But then can also like if you want to add more details and want to like stretch things out, they can be multiple sessions, and they can also be connected by because the whole thing of the bakery moving from town to town. They can be the same. You can go through all 13 with the same bakery moving to the different towns and stuff like that.
So as you're progressing, is there the concept of levels as well? Or
Mhm.
how do you become a better and better baker as you go? Or like, is there the concept of like accidentally burning your cake or something? Because I know I've burnt my fair share of, especially cookies. I don't know what it is about me and cookies, but I've burnt my fair share of those. So is there that
Mhm.
kind of mechanic where you get better and better at obviously the skills like you would have in normal, or in you? And normal's not a
Mhm.
pretty good term, but like in
Yeah.
D&D or in Pathfinder or something like that?
Yeah, there's level ups both for the individual bakers and for the bakery as a whole. Like the actual bakery can level up and get better. Um, and it's like speaking of like failing, like burning your cookies and stuff, failing is how you level up. Whenever you fail your rolls, you get an experience point. And then once you get 5 experience points, you gain a level. And each baker, there's like some level up options that everyone has access to, and then some that are unique to each baker. Uh, and then with the bakery, your bakery gets ratings. There's a whole concept of uh, like running the bakery and actually like serving people and baking things and like keeping things running smoothly, that you have to roll for. And when you roll well on them, your rating goes up. When you roll bad on them, your rating goes down or stays the same. And once you reach certain rating levels, your bakery gets upgrades, that helps you out, either on your adventure or while baking.
Nice, nice. Um, so just looking at the picture from the cover with the bakery on the legs, kind of reminiscent
Mm-hmm.
of it. Immediately made me think of the Baba Yaga like hut
Yeah.
on legs. Who's doing your art? Because this is absolutely like adorable and so cute.
Yeah, so the cover art, as well as a few other art pieces inside, was done by my good friend Tyler Palma, who has done art for me for a lot of things. We've actually been in a home like D&D campaign together for like I think 5 years at this point.
Oh
And he also like
wow.
yeah he did like character art for that. So when I was making this, he was the first person I went to, who I was like, hey, I want you to do the cover. I was like, I trust your art style. I trust like when I describe something, I know how that translates into his art. Um, and I yeah, he knocked it out of the park. Because that kind of was essentially what I went with was like the Baba Yaga. If the Baba Yaga had a bakery, um, was almost the original concept. There's a recipe in here and an adventure about the babka yaga, and that was the first thing. That pun was the first thing that kind of got me thinking on the mobile bakery. Um,
Nice.
yeah, but
Nice.
then I have three other artists who's done a bunch of art on the inside as well. Like this gorgeous one by Jess,
Nice.
Jess Seriously, Barclay Travis did some. Sparkly Travis did that one.
Oh,
Little
beautiful.
tiefling. Um, yeah, and it was mostly me reaching out to my friends and being like, "Hey, I would like to pay you to do art. How do you feel about that?" And then you most of the time them being like, "Yes, absolutely, thank you." Um,
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know many artists that would go, no, please don't hire me to do art, right? I don't know many people would go no to that.
yeah, and then yeah, this was my
That's
friend
really cute.
Rook. Yeah. So yeah, it was and also like I said, I had guest writers and stuff like that. Like those were also friends that I reached out to that I liked their writing and stuff. Um, yeah, it was a group activity for sure.
Nice. So in typical D&D fashion, you usually have like monsters to fight or or I mean I'm thinking the typical dungeon crawl, right? You go in, you beat
Mhm.
up on some stuff and you get your loot. What would be kind of the equivalent like I'm is there an equivalent of like quote the bad guys or the monsters or the things that you're fighting in your adventures, or is it a lot because you had mentioned earlier a lot of the social aspects, it's a lot more
Mhm.
community. So what's the is there well first off, is there the concept of monsters and the fights and the battles, or is it more a much more a less violent aspect of the game, I suppose?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is. I don't have like like a monster manual, but each of the adventures, there are some that do have monsters, enemies, and stuff like that. That I have little stat blocks for them, like what they can do, um, and like how they interact with the players. And there's always the option to fight them and to like to do combat, like the certain each there are certain abilities that each baker has access to that's like combat specific. There's also sometimes an enemy, instead of actual fighting, will do a baking competition with you. So there's that concept of like you
Nice.
baking against people, and like then you can sabotage each other, and things like that. There are little bake offs. And there's also you can always socialize your way out of something. Like there's always kindness is always an answer, is always an option to try and get away from an enemy.
Nice. I don't know why I have this image of somebody running after somebody with a rolling pin. But no, excuse me. Cool. So, what is a like? I'm obvious. I'm assuming that you've play tested and played this many times before. What are some fun anecdotes that you would say about that about playing the game that you or things that your party have done that are like that is not where I thought this was going, kind of moments that you'd like to share?
um I would say I there's probably one from I did recently actually, that is there's a video of it on YouTube that I put out, where we were playing through one of the adventures, that's a it's an apple pie recipe, um, and the adventure has to do with like this town, their whole like supply of apples has gone rotten, and they have to figure it out. And I was really surprised by the fact that like there's this kind of uh like suspicious character that the players are kind of supposed to uh follow and be suspicious of, but these players immediately were like, well, no, I trust this character implicitly, I'm not going to I'm not suspicious of them, I think it's a ghost, which it was a ghost. So yeah.
They did better than us. We had an adventure was once that I was a play on that one where there was definitely one of the bad guys was presented to us as a potential guide, and that's of course the one we hired.
Of course, yeah.
Of course. So yeah, that was great. That was great.
Yeah.
So I totally
and
get
also
the whole
and
like. Go ahead.
I was like, and with that same group, I was also kind of surprised by just like the characters they ended up choosing, because there really isn't, when it comes to like, there isn't like a race or like background kind of thing that you have to like choose from. Like you can play whatever you want. The only thing that's like a specific choice is your baker specialty. Um, and like there was one person who was they played an anthropomorphic otter who like wore tiny vests. One was a like large animated action figure, like plastic action figure man, who was a chocolate maker. And the third one was stereotypical camp counselor, like dad. And I was like, this is the weirdest amalgamation of people to be running a bakery together, but it worked really well.
Nice. So could you describe like typical character creation for us? So like what are the steps somebody would go through to pick their character?
Yeah, so there is a like a sheet that you can fill out. You don't have to actually physically fill it out, but it gives you good inspiration for uh, what to do. Um, uh, so it looks just like that.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
and there are questions that you can answer about your baker, like what what that got them into baking, what like what is their like style of baking, like post their actual specialty. Like, are they a like doing everything by the book? Are they more experimental? Are they like a messy baker? There's a series of questions that like you can ask um, and answer. Not it doesn't have to. You don't have to like actually uh, answer them
What kind of help to get an
completely.
idea of
Yeah, yeah,
if you don't
inspiration.
already have the a preconceived notion of like, hey, I really want to play this character, kind of help guide
Hmm.
the player into where they want to go type of deal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So in obviously this is a Loring Link stream. So one of the it's not very it's completely system agnostic how the actual system works. When somebody's trying to prep their adventure in something like Lore Link, where they're kind of entering their locations, the things they're maybe their protagonists, maybe their antagonists, maybe their NPCs, potentially
Hmm.
loot. I don't Do you have the concept of loot and that kind of treasure acquisition in the system? Like, how does that usually work?
There are certain adventures that will give you like specifically like the I'm just thinking of like the Babka Yaga adventure. If you defeat the Babka Yaga, she gives you a magic like wooden spoon that gives you that you can like basically bump up one of your roles like as a group like permanently. Um, so there's things like that where it's like you get it's less loot and more like you get boons from successfully doing adventures.
Oh, that's super cool. So when prepping the game, do you so somebody who's maybe a new like I'm a fairly novice GM in the grand scheme of the rest of the group.
Mm-hmm.
Um and I pretty much only run two things, a handful of games in um D&D 5e, and then on the complete opposite extreme, the honey heist. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and so I found that prepping those two was completely different, right? Because of the stats heavy versus you've got like three stats to keep track of it, you're done, and then it's all about adventure. So where would you suggest when trying to kind of organize their thoughts and organize their campaign, would a GM, if they were to like um use your system and like home create their own
Mm-hmm.
adventure or something, or they really like where an arc is going and they're just going to follow it through because like every I mean, I don't know about the groups you've played with. None of the groups I've ever played with has stuck to the story arc they were supposed to follow.
Yeah.
So how would you kind of, where would you suggest the GMs kind of start or kind of help organize their thoughts, or what's a good way, in your experience, to kind of figure out how to organize an adventure per se, or even if it's a pre-written one, like how to go about making it make sense for them.
Yeah, totally. So I always, when it comes to StoryBake and games like it, like more narrative driven games, I always find it's more, as a GM, you're more like reactive than you are like pre planning things. So I would think it's best to have like your like tent poles, your like these are, or like your checkpoints, even like these are places that the players have to hit to get to the next point in the story. Um, how, like to move forward or to like learn the next thing. Um, but then everything else in between can kind of be a bit more wishy-washy, a little bit more see how the players react to each different checkpoint and see where they need to move forward. Just because there's so many different ways that players can interact with the world that it's hard to like. It's either you plan every single possible reaction, or you plan a handful and kind of wing it. Um, and also with as the GM in Storybake, you don't roll any dice yourself. Everything is based on the players' roles and how those shape the world and shape their interactions with the world.
So it's more like can you describe that a little bit more? Because I'm imagining more like it's a contested role, like not really a contested role, but like how would, let's say a GM said is trying to say convince a player to follow the wrong path, or to follow, or to they're
Mm-hmm.
or to guide them towards a certain direction. How does that interaction work, or how does that role work? Is there like a threshold that the player needs to hit, or how does that can you kind of describe how that works a little bit?
Yeah, so the player, how a role would go is the usually the player describes what they're wanting to do. Like for instance, in your example, like the player is trying to figure out which path to take. Um, the GM would then ascribe that to one of the four stats, um, which the player either starting either has a -1, a 0, a +1, or a +2 in. The player will then roll 2d6 um, and add or subtract their stat number to that. If they get a 10 or above, the GM, it's full success. The GM will give them the information they need. Um, if it's 7 to 9, the GM will that's a mixed success, so they'll give some information, or then they might be a little bit more. There might be a thing that they need to sacrifice to go one way, or something like that. And then a 6 or below is failure, and the player will get probably wrong information or no information.
Makes sense, makes sense. So the um is there the concept of being able to gain damage in the concept of a failure? Can you, like, I don't know, can you burn your croissant and yourself? Or is there, like, is there
Mhm.
that concept at all?
Yeah, there is damage. There's like physical damage as well as something called conditions, um, which that you can have. There are positive and negative conditions, and usually it's if it's a positive one, you get like a +1 to a stat, and if it's a negative one, you get a -1 to that stat, or a -1 or more. Um, and yeah, then you have a certain amount of damage that you can take. Every baker has the same amount of damage that they can take. They can take up to 10 points of damage. Um, before something bad happens, um and that depends on the like something bad depend is like a conversation between the GM and the player. Like if you go through all 10 of your damage threshold, and the player's okay with it, like you can die, like your baker can completely die, or if they want to like go on a journey, or like they're like retiring or something like that, or even like if the player's like, hey, I'm not done with this character yet, the GM would be like, okay, you can just keep playing the character, but there's you get a certain big condition against you, like there's something that's like gonna permanently alter how you play the character, alter its stats.
So is there the concept of healing that damage, or once you take it,
Mhm.
you're kind of done? Because in my
Yeah,
opinion, chocolate heals absolutely everything. So I would assume there's
yeah.
some kind of healing something.
No, totally. You can heal. There are certain abilities that certain bakers have that can heal. There's also a thing of treats where you can bake treats and little baked goods that some you can make it so that those can heal. If you roll two sixes on your d6, like having two sixes at the same time, we call that a baker's dozen. So it's that full success, but then you get a little bit of extra, and one of the possibilities is you heal some of your damage. Um, and there's also like downtime activities that you can do where you heal your damage, and you can even heal like your permanent conditions and things like that.
Nice. That's really cool. Um, so the I'm running through. I had a list of questions for like I was like trying to figure out trying to describe the world and trying to think through the world in terms of um so treats and so you're talking about a bakery, and so I'm assuming that there's some kind of currency in the game at all. Like are you selling treats and then having to buy ingredients? Is there that level of actual management of the bakery, or is it more about pushing the story and the management is a little bit maybe less detailed than that?
It is more about kind of pushing the story, but there is many aspects of like the management of like getting ingredients and stuff like that. But we don't really worry about currency and like actually exchanging of goods. Because kind of like I mentioned earlier, there's an element of community and like helping out each other. So for the most part, like if it's a basic ingredient, if it's like butter, sugar, flour, you can just get that, or like have it at your disposal easily. But if there's like super special ingredients that you're like, oh, I know this seller, like this fruit vendor has this like really cool rare fruit in this town. You can go there, and the fruit vendor might be like, I will give it to you if you do like this favor for me, if you do this task for me, something like that. More so than like here's 10 gold. Um, so a bit more story heavy, a bit more adventure I think involved in that.
Nice. So coming up with all these concepts, like what was your favorite part about um the kind of the creative concept of going, because you mentioned you were a baker and loved baking, going from I'm a baker to I'm writing a TTRPG. How was that process, and do you still work in the food and baking industry today, or is now have you gone or is the TTRPG world kind of your primary focus at this point?
So to I guess answer backwards, I do still bake, and I'm still writing recipes. That's not my full time job, but it is. I say I wear many hats. Like I have a day job, but then I also have content creation and producing, and also recipe making, and baking, and things like that. Um, for the most part, like I haven't worked in a actual like kitchen, like in a bakery, in a couple years, mostly because I wanted to focus on recipe development, and making my own recipes and recipe testing. 'Cause that's always been my favorite part of baking, is like that science of it, like the experimenting with it. Like my favorite class in culinary school was our baking science class. Um, and like if all of my classes were a baking science class, I would have been so happy. But yeah, when it came to actually writing it, um, it was a weird process just because I was like kind of simultaneously writing the game while also like making the recipes, because I knew like from the beginning I knew I wanted it to be have both. And like I was like, oh, I want the recipes to tie to the adventure, so I kind of like I like had my base concept. I like multiple kind of things going, and then I would like have a recipe and like, cool, I'm gonna write this adventure for that recipe. It would sometimes be like, I need this mechanic to exist to make this adventure make sense. So it kind of felt like I was juggling a little bit. Um, I don't know if that's a good way to do it, but it's it's how we got to it in the end. Um, but it's a very fluid process, I think.
Nice. How long did it take you to come up with the first iteration of the game?
The first iteration, honestly, it took me probably about 6 months or so. The thing that took me the longest was writing the adventures. Because, like I said, there's 13 of them. I wrote 10 of them. And then I had three guest writers who wrote the final three. Um, and then I also made all the recipes myself for all 13. And it that making the recipes takes a long time. Like I spent maybe I think 6 months on a chocolate chip cookie recipe alone. um, and then once I got into the swing of it, kind of reached a flow state of writing the adventures, I kind of almost like had a template of it, and was able to do that
So
a
are
bit
you
quicker. Mhm.
Yeah, so you're continuing to write adventures today, or is it, are you planning on writing any expansions or on the current game, or you're working on something else now, or where is it going?
Yeah, so uh I have other like projects I've been working on. Like I just did a project for Zine Month throughout February. Um and I've had other smaller things come out. For StoryBake though, I am in the process of releasing kind of like what I'm calling the deluxe version at the moment. Which isn't to say that like the base, this version of StoryBake is like the simple basic version. Uh, it's just there are things that like now I'm like, oh, I want to add more of that in here. Like I want to add like a world map of like all the different towns and all the adventures and stuff like that. Because originally I wanted Storybake to be kind of setting agnostic, like you could do it in any world you want. Um, and then I realized, oh, I could still do that, but then also have a fun map of all the different towns I've talked about and things like that, and have a bit more of that, like that world building, that lore built in. So I'm working on expanding, and like that would also come with writing more adventures and having more recipes in there, and maybe and like possibly updating the adventures that already exist.
So you mentioned obviously a lot of baking. If for those of us who have not maybe quite the experience baking that you do, what are some just practical baking tips that you would throw out there for people that you wish everybody would know because it would make their life so much simpler or easier when baking?
Um, my like the biggest tip I always tell people is if your recipe tells you to cream your butter and sugar together, you gotta do that for a long time. Like at least 10 minutes of like creaming to really get like light and fluffy and make if you're making cookies, like make your cookies come out right. And then my second thing is that your oven temperature is probably wrong. um because every oven, even ovens of like the same brand, same model, um can be completely different, have different flaws and stuff in them. So it's getting like an oven thermometer and putting that in your oven, finding like the hot spots and the cold spots, and stuff like that. And yeah, for baking at altitude, different altitudes affect baking time and baking temperatures. At baking something at sea level versus like if you're in Colorado, like things bake different. Making popcorn in Colorado is different. Like it's I I don't know why I'm not trying to bully Colorado. I'm sorry, but
I
um,
mean, they do have a city called the Mile. What is it? Denver's the Mile High City, or something.
yeah,
The I'm in Colorado and I feel vindicated. Yep, Mile High City, yes. So I mean,
yeah,
they have a teeny
uh,
bit of altitude, just a smidge.
yeah, just a little bit. I think also is just always I say read your recipe twice before you even start. It's kind of like the measure twice, cut first. Read twice, butter first, or no, yeah, measure twice, cut once. That's what. Yeah, read twice, butter once. That's it.
Yeah, I think I feel like I just need to add on most of my recipes and don't cut my own fingers. Blood is not,
Yeah.
in fact, the secret ingredient.
No.
Um, but that's the accident prone on this end. And when you're developing a recipe, what are some of the things that and you kind of mentioned really loving baking chemistry because I feel like
Mhm.
a lot more of the baking is maybe more like actual scientific chemistry related than people might
Mhm.
think of if you just think of the types of ingredients we put in baking. What are some what made that so what part of that is enjoyable, and what does that process look like for you when you're trying to come up with a new recipe?
Yeah. So yeah, when I'm like coming up with something new, a lot of times it just kind of starts with me having an idea of like I think this would be yummy, or I think this would like work really well, and then I kind of just like go for it a little bit. Like I don't really think about it, and just almost go by instinct of like I know I need I know I need it to be like fluffy, so I need to add baking powder, and like I know this like thinking of those different things like but not figuring out the like itty bitty the nitty gritty excuse me until later, but just kind of improving that first bake, baking it, and then figuring out where I went wrong. And I think actually that's probably my favorite part is like the figuring out where I go wrong. Like I'll literally like I'll be eating something and then also have a notebook of like writing down just things that I'm thinking of as I'm eating. Like could be like the temperature or the bake time or less flour, more baking soda, more sugar, um, and then trying again, things like that.
So when you're like I know for me like the I spent pretty much the entirety of the pandemic trying to figure out how to make French baguette. Um
Mm,
and figuring out especially the temperature and the rise and whatever else is
yeah.
when to some level of success. It's pretty good baguette, but it's I mean it's not French out of a bakery baguette yet. We'll get there. But
They
like
had
what
hundreds of years to perfect there, so like don't
I
yeah.
know, right? I know. And the other thing I found out is the steam in the oven works really great. It's just not great when it bounces back at you. But
Yeah.
details. Funny how it burns. Gasp. I don't
Yeah.
know. Um, but what are some if people are struggling with what are the most common mistakes you see people make with baking? I mean, you mentioned making sure you fluff your butter enough, but
Mhm.
what are like the most common things you'd say are the most common mistakes that you would suggest people look into if they're failing at baking in some way?
Yeah. I think probably the most common thing is inaccurate measuring. Like making sure like when if you need a cup of flour and you're scooping it out of like your flour bin or whatever, making sure you're leveling it off and there's not like air pockets in there. Making sure it's like that, you're getting that kind of exact amount of whatever ingredient you're going for, because you mentioned earlier baking is a chemistry, so you don't want to have too much of one thing versus the other or else the chemistry doesn't work right. um, I always suggest people like using a scale to bake, like it'll come out better and probably easier. Unfortunately, a lot of American recipes, at least, don't use weight, which is a shame. But
I wish
yeah.
because like flour's so much easier. I put it in the bowl. It
Hmm.
tells me exactly like I need,
Yeah.
500 grams of flour. Fine. It's there. It's the number. Like I don't have to worry about is it sifted flour? Is it compacted
Hmm.
flour? Is it like no,
Yeah.
it's the grams don't lie.
Exactly.
Martine feels vindicated. My sister converts her recipes to grams now. It's so much easier. And it means
It's
I
so
don't
much
have
easier.
20
Yeah.
spoons and 20 cups, right? I can just
Hmm.
shove everything in the bowl and which I did find apparently order matters. Like I did
Hmm.
find that out even like shoving if the recipes tells you steps and you just said met and just shove everything in a bowl, I found out that's fairly early on, I guess, but like that
Hmm.
apparently that doesn't work or not
Yeah.
near as well anyway. It's funny how that works.
There are some, all-in-one recipes that do work really well. A lot of breads actually are like fairly all-in-one. Um, some the
That's true.
Yeah, the weird French breads sometimes they get a little stingy about stuff, but that's just the French in general. So I'm not now I'm bullying the French. I'm so sorry.
It's
Um,
okay. You're cool. You're cool. As Tony and Tony or the peanut gallery is going about the no, it's I am French, so it's fine. You can I can bully them all day long.
oh.
And yes, we are pretty we are pretty stuck up about certain things and certain recipes. I won't lie. But yeah, what would be a like what would she say like somebody who's inexperienced, what's a great like first recipe to try? Like something that's the I have nothing to say against the French. Oh sure. Now you have nothing. Sure. I finally I made 20 speechless. Mwahaha. Okay. Um um yeah, where was it? Oh yes. What's a
A good
completely
beginner
lost my train of
recipe.
thought. Yes, that.
Yeah. I would say probably the best beginner recipes are brownies. Just because I think brownies are very forgiving, and like even a bad brownie is still very good. Um, and I almost never, when I make brownies, almost never use an actual recipe. I do kind of just throw things together. Um, Even I say that while also having a brownie recipe in this book. That one I did do the science part of it, so you can trust that recipe. um and they're also brownies are good, like you can add extra, like you can add like peanut butter chips or like extra things on top of it, um and just kind of customize them to your own liking a little bit more than other things. Like cookies can be a bit more harder to work with in that way. But yeah, I say brownies for sure.
Yeah, I have a tendency to be like, oh, you want this much powdered cocoa? As the cup is like, boop. Or it's like, oh, you want
Yeah.
how many grams? Close enough.
Yeah.
And then extra chocolate's always good. Um,
Yeah.
what would you say,
Sometimes
like,
baking is geology, not chemistry. You're a bit more loosey goosey with it.
what would you say the hardest recipe you've ever made is? And is that one, and when you're picking recipes for your adventures, are you generally trying to aim for things that are maybe more approachable to somebody who's not as experienced with baking, or is there room for that one recipe that's like the if you can make this, then you've got this type of deal?
Mhm. Most of the When I was approaching the recipes for the book, I was thinking I want these to be, for most levels of bakers. The one recipe that I think is probably the hardest and a bit more intermediate is the babka recipe. Just because it's an enriched dough bread, which is a lot more harder to work with, and like you're dealing with chocolate and you're dealing with like twisting and like cutting it and stuff like that. Um, and there's a lot more steps to it. But I think that one's still approachable if you're patient with it. Um, but then separately, the hardest thing I ever made was probably a baked Alaska, um, which I made in
What is
culinary
that? I
school.
don't never heard of it.
So it's like a dome of ice cream covered in meringue that you then either blowtorch or pour burning alcohol over.
Ooh.
Um, and I in culinary school made a Earl Grey and toasted coconut baked Alaska. And I was like, cool, this is my high, this is my peak. Everything is downhill from here. And it was true. It's just, yeah, that's just, you have to be so exact with everything, and so it's so precarious, not letting your ice cream melt and like not letting your meringue get droopy and like burning it the right amount and stuff like that.
Right. So it's all about the precision aspect at that point.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Cool. Oh, I'm being poked at in Slack. I'm being told to talk about the trifle. So apparently, a friend of mine, I'd asked him what he wanted for. He was coming over for his birthday, and so I was like, "Hey, what kind of cake do you want?" And he jokingly said a trifle. And I didn't know what a trifle was. So I went online and I say, okay, fruit, cake, okay, pudding, okay. All of these things I know how to make. And so I'm sitting there making, each step. I realized finding a good pudding recipe apparently that doesn't start with open box is apparently really, really
Yeah.
hard. Um, which that took I think it took me longer to find the pudding recipe than to actually make the
Hmm.
trifle. But so I get there and I'm like, I've made a trifle. Now, granted, there was four of us for dinner. The quantities to make a trifle are absolutely ridiculous. So we had
Yeah.
enough dessert for like 20. But details. He asked for a trifle
That's
for his
fine.
birthday,
Yeah.
right? I had an all I didn't really have all day, but it did take me all day. Um, so I made the thing, and he looked at me and thought I was completely insane. But it was really fun. So for those of you that want to lose an afternoon, uh, trifles are great. I guess
Yeah.
it was really good. Um, but no,
Mhm.
for some reason finding a pudding recipe that didn't start with open box was because that was the other thing. He knew like
Yeah.
he very quickly realized that I don't really do things out of a box. I was like, if you're gonna make a cake, like I'm gonna make a cake,
Mhm.
right? So yeah, it took a hot minute, but no. So
Yeah.
every time baking ridiculousness gets brought up, people are like, "Tell the story about the trifle." I'm like, "It's not that great."
Yeah.
I got told make me a trifle. I didn't realize I missed the sarcasm.
Yeah. No, I
Whoops.
will say though, a lot of professional bakeries and pastry shops do like use boxed cake mix sometimes. It's usually like they'll use the box cake mix, but do like their own thing with it. Because usually the box cake mix is just like flour, baking soda and powder, and like salt, and like maybe a little bit of like preservatives in there or something. So it just kind of like you can skip a few steps ahead with your dry ingredients and just use like the box. Like even like fancy places that you'd be like, oh, they use box cake mix, like use box stuff.
So are there, particular brands or things to look for in terms of Boz cakes that you would recommend over others that maybe work better or just better quality or better ingredients than
Mhm.
others?
Yeah. My like go to is King Arthur. It's King Arthur flour. It's like a flour brand. Um, just has like really good quality. They also have they have really good just recipes in general. They have a big book of their recipes that is essentially my like baking bible. Um, and they have boxed cake mix and like muffins, cookies, things like that. That if I don't feel like getting all the individual stuff like that, I will get one of those. It's also, I believe, it's a worker owned
Oh,
company,
interesting.
so so that's really cool.
Cool. So the when you're so before I'm gonna bring it back to the game just a little bit because
Mhm.
I mean but the before starting kind of down writing this game, and you've obviously been baking for a very long time, but how about gaming? Like, what brought you into gaming and into TTRPGs, and and into that realm and to the idea of wanting to create your own game?
So it actually started when I was in college. Before I went to culinary school, I actually went to school for music history and creative writing. Um, didn't major in it, but I did theater and I did like improv and stuff like that. And so I was friends with all the theater people, and they did the show She Kills Monsters, which is a show about like people who play D&D. It's a very fun show if you don't know it. Uh, and they the director as like a group activity, told all of the cast, because it's like I think it's a 6 person cast. They're like, to get into character, I want you all to play a D&D campaign together. And so I would like, they would do it like in the theater department lobby essentially, and I would just be like hanging around, and I was like, that looks fun. And then I found other friends who were like in either already into D&D or wanted to get into it. And we like played a little bit. But then it wasn't until quarantine, until the pandemic, that I was like, I'm stuck home alone. I live by myself, and I'm gonna go crazy if I don't have social interaction. And so I started my own like D&D game, um, like doing it through Discord. My first time GMing anything, and that's actually the game that Tyler was in, that I still has been running for 5 years now, almost 6 years now. Um, and then yeah, from there I like horizons wide into indie games. I think the first indie game I played was Monster of the Week. Um, and then getting into writing it, I wrote a couple like one-paged short TTRPGs. The first one I ever wrote was a game about surviving the zombie apocalypse in a Waffle House. It's called Waffle House is Open. And I yeah.
I mean, if Waffle
And
House is closed, we're all doomed. That's all
yeah,
there is to it. Like, if it's
truly.
ever closed, we're just I mean, it's over.
Yeah, you're if there's a closed Waffle House near you, you're in the wrong place. Like, get out of there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then that then turned into, well, if I can make one page, I can make a however many pages this is game.
Cool. Did you have in the process of writing it, did you have like was it kind of you came up with it and then had you've never eaten at the Waffle House, you're missing out. It's it's
It's an
an experience.
experience. Yeah.
Um, so when you were creating the game, did you usually go with like I'm gonna write a portion, then play test it, see if it works, and then kind of iterate on it, or did you kind of like chunk, here's the thing, let's try it out? Like how was that for you? And um how did you if you were to write another one or as you're writing another one, how has that process changed for you? Or is it still the same?
It was mostly the first iteration at least was like, here's the big, kind of like completed version of it. Then I play tested, and then realized, oh, this isn't even close to complete, and like went back and changed things and added things. Um, and then that was a lot more than back and forth and stuff like that. And I got a lot of help from um, the person who did my layout, Abby Kelly, who's an amazing friend of mine. Um, helped me kind of like with the basic stuff of it. Like, if you're writing a TTRPG, you want to make sure you have like these things mentioned. You want to make sure you have these things in there that you don't always think about if you've been playing them for a long time. Um, and yeah, with other games I've written, I think, and like moving forward, I do kind of still write them in that like big, big first chunk, and then play testing them. Just because I think that's how my brain works. Um, I call it. I go through a phase of what I call the spaghetti at the wall phase, where I'm just throwing everything, and then seeing what sticks, and then from there, like building that up as much as I can, then play testing, figuring out what I need or don't need, and chiseling it away uh, as I go.
Nice. So as like where can we find this game? Like where can our audience go and acquire a copy so that they can start, baking and adventuring as well?
Yeah. So you can get digital copies on Drive Through RPG or on Itch under my Tiny Ghost Chef Baking or Tiny Ghost Chef Games handle. Currently on Itch, it's on sale. It's on 30% off because today is my 30th birthday. Um,
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And if you want a physical version of it, like this one, you can go to Plus One EXP and get it from their website. Or if you're at a convention that Plus One EXP is at, they will most likely have it there with them also. It's currently not in any like stores or anything like that other than Plus One.
Nice. And where can we find you for those who would like to follow you online
Yeah,
or see what other wonderful projects and upcoming, pieces that you're working on that might come out?
yeah. So you can find me on Blue Sky and Instagram at Dan is Baking, and on TikTok as Dan the Baker. You can also find me on YouTube at Open Table Adventures, where I post a lot of recipes, and also a lot of actual plays and interviews with creators. We have a ongoing series going on right now of kids on bikes, which is very fun. And I'm always around. I never know when to shut up. So it's you can find me talking about something somewhere.
Nice. So, is there any last things that I didn't ask about that you would like to share with our audience, or anybody else, or anything else you would like to plug before we end the stream today?
I do. I realize I didn't mention them by name. I then mentioned my three guest writers. But I just want to make sure that I say their names. Diana Larico, VJ Harris, who I believe just had no, their Kickstarter just ended, so it's fine. They just had a successful Kickstarter, and Danny Quach were my three wonderful writers who helped me out with that. So I just want to make sure I shouted them out by name.
Nice. Well, thank you for so much for having talking is hard, apparently. Thank you so much for coming and for hanging out with us and for being part of the stream today. This was a Lore Link stream. Please do check it out. You can get subscribed to our product today to start your campaigns and managing your games, including StoryBake, as LoreLink is completely system agnostic, so you make it work the way you need to for you. And so, with that, uh, I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their week. Have a great one, everybody.